Hi, this is Brett Ingram, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator, and today I want to help answer the question, what is the best digital business to start? So digital business, everybody wants in. Everybody's thinking about how can I run a digital business? And with good reason, right? Because the thing about running a digital business is that you have a lot of advantages over a lot of the other options that we can do in terms of career moves. So one of the things is we're going to be able to have more control over our life, over our time, over our career, and over our finances. Or at least that is sort of the idea or the benefits or the reasons that people are motivated to want to start a digital business. Because those are the things that we see, those are the things that seem to make sense and seem to be the logical sort of benefits and extensions of being a digital business owner. And the thing of it is, ultimately, to be able to start one, the great thing about it is that it's a lower risk and investment than any of the traditional business options. So part of the reason so many people are becoming or trying to become digital entrepreneurs is because for the first time really in history, the barriers to entry are so low that it doesn't require a lot of the things that you would have needed in decades or centuries past to be able to start a business. You don't need a tremendous amount of financing or funding up front. In fact, you can typically start it with, a couple $100s or less. You have the benefits of not needing physical office space or retail space, which is obviously very expensive. The whole advertising basically idea is been democratized by the fact that we have social media, by the fact that we have online advertising. So you no longer need to be a giant advertising behemoth or have a huge budget in order to be able to hire somebody like that to do it for you. And ultimately, all the other benefits in there as well. Like we don't need employees, we don't need inventory, we don't have overhead. So in a lot of cases, a digital business is something that because we feel like we could start it from our own house, our own apartment, whatever, and we could do it even as a side hustle, that makes it a lot more attractive. If you think about that and you contrast it to what the other options are, if you decided that you were going to open, an ice cream shop, you're going to need funding. You're going to need money to be able to get a physical location because you need people to come and buy your ice cream. They have to have a place to be able to go get it. So you're going to have a rent. You're going to need freezers. You're going to need inventory. So you're going to need thousands of dollars to be able to spend on all of these things as well. And then you have to do some kind of promotion. Even if you're in a high traffic walking area, you're going to want to do something for promotion to make sure that you generate enough business. And then you need to have the store staffed at all times because every minute that the door is closed and the lock is shut is a minute that you aren't able to sell ice cream. And so in that sort of example, you can really see sort of the trade-offs or the differences between a traditional business and a digital business. Now that said, obviously running an ice cream business has its benefits as well because it's very simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's very simple in the sense that you don't need to think about how to market ice cream. People want ice cream, they buy ice cream. So if you're in a high traffic area and you're somewhere, especially when it's warm or they're during festive occasions, people are going to naturally line up. We have a number of these ice cream shops in town and I don't see them running tons of ads, but there's a line out the door when it's summertime and it's hot out. So there are trade-offs, as always there are. And so the traditional business options, made it very difficult and made it limited in terms of the number of people who are able to actually try that. Whereas digital business sort of, again, democratizes that as well and allows everybody a chance if they want to get into it to do that. And so, we're looking for freedom, we're looking for control, flexibility, independence, right? Because when we have our own business, the idea is what we think of is that now I have freedom. Okay, I can do what I want when I want, right? I also have control. I'm not answering to a boss. I don't have somebody telling me what to do. I get to make the decisions and I get to decide what I do when I do it. Flexibility. If, you're in a job or you have, a business where you're in one set vertical, then that's what you're doing. If you have a digital business, you have the ability to be flexible, right? So you can change things around. You can do different things on a different day. You can modify your offerings and things like that. Independence is another big benefit, right? So if you are running your own business, then you have the ability to do things independently of other people. You don't need somebody else to sign off on anything or to authorize it or to allow you to do it. You can just do it. And so that's another great advantage, because if you're someone who likes to take charge and be in control and be able to do things your way, then independence is really big there. There's also adaptability. One of the nice things about a digital business is because there's so low overhead and so few fixed expenses, that you can get started in one particular niche or genre or type of business, and you can shift gears. I've done this a number of times. When I was in my very beginnings, I was creating sort of info products, and then I switched from info products to more done-for-you type services. And the done-for-you services were great because they were, very, very high converting, because people like to have stuff done for them. But they were also very labor intensive. And so I realized that that was going to be a tough model to keep up with unless I, had a really big team, and that wasn't really something that I wanted to do. So then I had to shift again, and I shifted more into software. And so I was able to adapt and evolve the business multiple ways over multiple years into different things. Whereas again, I suppose if we go back to the ice cream shop analogy, or a job that we're working in, you don't usually have the ability to sort of create or design your own job if you're working for a company. And if you have an ice cream business, well, you could sell it, but it's going to be difficult to sort of adapt it into something else. You could start to offer new products, things like that. But other than that, you're sort of selling ice cream. I mean, that's what you're doing. So the other biggest benefit, probably of all of them, is that because you can start it as a side hustle, right? One of the greatest parts about that is you don't need to go all in with the risk. You don't need to quit your job and then put on your ice cream hat and get your scooper out and go stand behind the counter and hope that customers show up. You could do it at home, at night, in the morning, on the weekend, whatever, and get it started, and then see if you can get it to a point where it's viable to be able to quit, which, by the way, is what I did. When I started out my digital business, I was actually in grad school. I already had kids and a family at home. I was working a full-time job, and I was going to graduate school part-time, nights and weekends. I had very little free time, and I was able to do it that way, so I didn't need to give up everything else and put this giant amount of risk on my back in order to be able to start it. Once I got it to a point where it was viable and I knew, hey, this is something that if I invest my full time in, I can really make this go, that's when I was able to pull the trigger and do that. So that's the other great thing. And then, of course, the other thing that everybody thinks about on one level or another is the income potential, right? If you're in a job, usually there's a limited amount of income potential. You might get a raise, you might get a bonus, but whatever it is, high or low, it's probably limited in some regard, unless you're running the show. Even when you're talking about sort of a brick and mortar business, if it's something like an ice cream shop, there's going to be some variability, but there are some limits. Unless you're going to franchise, unless you're going to open multiple shops around town, with one shop, you have some limits there. Whereas in the digital world, you can scale so much quicker and so much easier that obviously that's a huge benefit and a carrot as well. That said, it's important to understand before you jump both feet in with a digital business what the drawbacks are, because there are some. One of the drawbacks of a digital business is lack of structure. Some people really thrive in an environment where everything is sort of structured and set up for them. They know what their role is. They go in, they do their thing, and they're very good at that. And if that's the kind of environment that you thrive in, you need to be careful when you venture off into a digital business, because it's sort of organic and roll your own. There is no real structure to it. In fact, if you ask 10 different people, how to run a digital business, you'll get 10 different answers because there's different ways to do it depending on what you're doing, depending on where you are. So it's very sort of ambiguous. It's important that we're able to deal with ambiguity. It's important that we're able to be comfortable in that space and be able to be okay with creating our own structure instead of having it provided for us where we work within it. There's also another drawback is the variability. Okay, so no matter what industry we go in, one of the challenges with the online world, it's sort of the blessing and the curse, is that because it's constantly evolving and moving so quickly, there's a lot of variability. Things change quite a lot. A perfect example of this is sort of the SEO or search engine optimization niche. And also, by the way, the online advertising niche is the same. So even 10 years ago, the options that you had for online advertising were so limited that those were the ones that you did. You fast forward a few more years, all of these different platforms offer digital ads. Now there's all different types of ads. There's audio ads, there's video ads, there's image ads, there's text ads. It used to just be text, and then it was text and images. Now there's that too. Now you have dynamic ads where you can change things on the fly. It's also become more sort of mature in the sense that there are some marketers who really understand it and are crushing it in that space, so it's become harder to compete. From an SEO or search engine optimization standpoint, when search engines came out and people realized, hey, if I can rank at the top of this search engine, I get a lot of free traffic. Instantly, people were trying to game it and figure out how to get to the top. And so they realized, keywords. So they would hide keywords in the like footers of their pages where they just kept repeating the same word over and over and over again. And search engines gobbled that up and thought, oh, this is great. Look at all the targeted content here for this particular search. But then search engines realized this is a scam. People are just keyword stuffing and there's no real content. So then they changed. And anybody who had keyword stuffed websites went from page 1, dropped all the way off the search engine rankings. Then they needed to look at, and then it was backlinks. And so then they started to add a lot of backlinks. And then they rose back up in the search engines. And then search engines realized there's ways to gain backlinks. So then they cut that down. And so it's an ongoing sort of evolving thing with tons of variability. And it's very difficult to know or predict all the time how stable things are going to be. So you have to be very comfortable in that as well. I know in my own industry, things were going really well. And then all of a sudden at one point, based on a number of different circumstances, but the market almost imploded overnight. The digital marketing space for digital products, this is a ways back now, it's over 10 years ago, but essentially people were absolutely, it was like the gold rush. They were crushing it. They were making tons of money. Launches were getting into the millions of dollars. And then literally almost overnight, like a faucet, it was turned off because of some scams and some other issues and credit card processing and all that, which don't really matter. But the point is, people that were running very legitimate businesses were basically shut down overnight and had to be able to change gears, shift gears, and figure out how to survive that. And so there's variability. The other thing is you're on your own. So the blessing of independence, again, is also a curse. There isn't anybody to tell you, oh, now do this, oh, now do that, oh, this is the way that you solve that problem or work through this. You got to figure that stuff out. We have to be creative problem solvers, figure out how to get to the root of the problems and solve them. Otherwise, we struggle. And so, that's another potential issue. And then you have the work-life balance and the spillover between work and life. So if we work a job and we go into an office, we may have some work to bring home, but ultimately when we unplug, when we drive home, we're on our own, right? We might have some stuff that we need to do, but other than that, we're pretty good. Same thing, by the way, if we have the ice cream shop. One of the benefits is, you have a liquor store, an ice cream shop. When you shut the lights off, you might have to do some accounting or some stuff like that when you get back to the office or back to the house, but the store is closed. The business is shut. We don't need to worry about that. We can do things in our personal life. With a digital business, those lines are really blurry. And so our work-life balance becomes really difficult to manage, especially if we're running it out of our own house. Because now your personal space is your workspace and vice versa. So are you sitting on your bed with a laptop when you're watching TV? Are you, in the middle of your workday and then doing dishes in the sink because you see them when you walk by the sink? There are all these things that blur those lines. And for years, people were jealous of anybody who got to work from home or got to be their own boss. And then in the age of COVID, people realized, hey, you know what? Yeah, there's benefits to it, but it's not quite as easy as I thought. It's kind of difficult to manage that work-life balance and to be able to do it in a way where I keep my sanity, but at the same time, I'm able to build a successful business. And then there's the pressure to perform. Depending on what kind of job that you work in, or what kind of, business or industry, you may have a job where, you can have days, obviously in any job, you have to perform on some level, but there can be days where, just not feeling that great today. You know what I mean? I'm going to watch a little bit of TV at my desk and, I'll make a couple of calls, and then I'm just going to go home. And tomorrow when I feel better, and the company can absorb that because, it's an ongoing thing, and it's a larger company that's comprised of a lot of people. And on your bad day, someone else is having a great day and they're crushing it. So all those things work. The problem is when you're yourself and you're your own boss, you're only eating what you kill. So if you aren't out hunting every day, you aren't eating that day. And so the challenge or the problem with that is you do need to be able to perform, and you need to be comfortable with the idea of that kind of pressure. And that's something that we just need to embrace. Some of us love it, and some of us, that scares us. And then there is obviously unpredictability with income as well. With any business, this is going to be true, but it's definitely true in digital business. When you have a job and you have a paycheck, that paycheck comes in month after month after month. If you're in sales, it might go up and down, things like that, but it's relatively predictable. In the digital marketing space, it can be completely unpredictable. It can be very high one month, very low the next month, somewhere in between the month after, and there'll be boons and there'll be sort of peaks and valleys with the way that you approach it and with the results that you get. So you have to be comfortable being able to manage that as well. So, the bottom line is there are pluses and minuses, but it's understandable why lots of people want to get into digital business. So what is the best digital business? If we're taking the plunge, what is the best digital business to start? Well, the first thing is we need to decide what we're interested in, what we're drawn to, and what we love to do. Because the one thing about it is, and it's important never to make this mistake, into thinking that business is easy. It's never easy. There will be good times and there will be struggles, but it is difficult. It's hard work, and there will be ups and downs. And so if we don't like what we do, it's going to feel like work, it's going to feel like a struggle, and we're going to be less motivated, especially with no one pushing us to do it, to want to persevere, work through the obstacles, and be able to come out on top. When we love what we do, then the obstacles seem smaller and we can overcome them, and we can love what we're doing. Because the fact is, when it's sort of a labor of love and it's passion that drives us, we don't see obstacles in the same way, and we're able to come through that. So it's important to love it or be passionate about it. And then once we've gotten to that idea, there are a lot of different options. So this is not a full list, but these are some of the most common things. One of the things that we could do is e-commerce or drop shipping. So if you want to sell digital products, physical products, you can do that using drop shipping, where you never have to house them. Other companies will drop ship them for you. E-commerce, everyone knows this, basically Amazon, Etsy, you can set up your own e-commerce store and sell stuff that way. There's coaching and consulting. So if you have a particular skill or expertise in a particular area, then you could offer that as a service to people on a monthly basis or whatever, or just on a buy one sort of lesson at a time. And you can offer coaching and consulting. You can do affiliate marketing, where you aren't creating any products at all. You're creating content and you're creating reviews and things like that, guides and how-tos and how to get more out of stuff for various products that are already out there. And then you're just using an affiliate link to promote those products instead, using the content you're creating. You can offer remote services like remote support, customer support, tech support, virtual assistants, graphic design, web design, video production, SEO. And those things can be done on sites like Fiverr and Upwork. It's sort of like the gig economy, right? You just go create a profile there. You can do this kind of work for other people, and you can do that as a side hustle as well. You can do social media, blogging or vlogging. So if you like to create content, you could be creating content, whether it is video content, image content, written text content, audio content, podcasts, whatever, right? You can do any of these kinds of things, and there are ways to monetize all of it. Because if you have an audience, then you can get sponsors or run ads or do all these other things. You can create digital products, whether it's software or whether it's e-learning stuff. So guides, how-tos, courses, or actual software itself. There are pros and cons to all of these. So the idea is, get the idea in your head that you're most excited about, and then there's some important points that make the difference between success and failure. The first is to follow your passion. Don't chase the cash. It can be very easy to find an industry that looks like it's right for the picking and that there's a lot of money to be made there. The problem with that is everybody else sees it too. And some people that you're going to need to compete with in that space love it. So if you don't, that's who you're competing against. And eventually they're likely to drive us out because we don't love it the same way they do. It's better to be into something that we're passionate about, that we enjoy, because that's something we can stick with and be successful. You can be successful and make money in any of these industries, any of these niches. So it isn't about, well, which one will make money and which one won't. They all will if you can do the right things. And by the way, they can all fail also. So it just depends on what we bring to the table. Second thing is to have goals in mind when we start, right? What is our purpose? Where are we trying to go with all of this? It's important to know that so we can steer the ship to get to where we want to go. If we don't have any idea what it is, why we got into this in the first place, and we don't know what it is we're trying to get out of it, how are we ever going to know if we get there? So it's important to have an understanding of what we're trying to do from the onset. And then find a success to model or a mentor. This is a big one, and it's one that I actually wish that I did, because it took me a lot longer because I didn't do this. If you can find a company, if you can find a person who's done what you're trying to do and model that, that's fantastic. If you can find a mentor that's done it, that's even better, because they can give you all the shortcuts you need to get to success with as little grief and frustration and as fast as possible. And then once we've done all that stuff, it's just decide, focus, and take action. So once we've decided and we're all in, we got to do this. And then we need to focus. We don't then start thinking about all the other ideas that, oh, well, this didn't work well today, so now I'm going to shift gears and do this. If this is what we're doing, we're focusing on it, we're finding a way to make it work. And then taking the action to actually make it happen. Nothing happens. Tons of people have great ideas that ultimately those ideas go nowhere because there's no action put behind it. At the end of the day, once we know what we want and once we know what we're trying to do, we need to take action to get it going. So the takeaway here is starting a digital business can be an exciting, exhilarating experience with the potential to change our lives. But it can also be frustrating, exhausting, overwhelming, and hard. So it's important to be doing something that we love or are passionate about. It's also important that we know why we're doing it and what our goals are, so we can stay focused and on the right track. Finally, by finding a success story that we can model or a mentor who can guide us, we can give ourselves the greatest chance of success.